To introduce our next entrepreneur. Yasmin Helal is founder and executive director of Educate Me. I will let her explain more about her initiative. Suffice it to say, she is a phenomenal young woman, and also was one of the social entrepreneurs that worked with us in the pilot. So thank you for bearing with us as we had you as a guinea pig for the program. So you can also ask her any questions you like about how we piloted and what happened in November later. Come on, Yasmin.
Okay, I'll start by sharing two confessions. The first one, I feel slides make me feel very uncomfortable. So you will not find a lot of stuff here. You're going to find more stuff here. And the second thing, when I started Educate Me, actually, I had absolutely no idea what I was getting myself into. I didn't know that entrepreneurship was a word. I didn't know what a business plan was. I didn't know how to set a vision. I didn't know how to do any of that. But it kind of started by coincidence. So the story goes back to 4 years ago, exactly the same day as today, 21st of June 2010. Back then, I was an engineer working in a telecommunications multinational, Alcatel-Lucent. My background has always been engineering. I was also a professional basketball player. But then, one very random day, I was approached by a man in his late 30s. And this man came to me on the street and he said, I need money because I want to send my 3 daughters to school. It wasn't as shocking to realize that he was not sending his kids to school, but the shock was that the amount of money he needed was almost $20. And this for me was very, very upsetting. I felt that I was living in this bubble, in the same city with the man, having absolutely no idea what was happening. And this very little amount of money was going to secure an education for his 3 daughters for 1 entire year. So back then, having the very little experience I had being part of the corporate world, I decided to start a very small fundraiser campaign, called it Educate Me just for the sake of calling it something. And the whole purpose of it was to collect donations and to send financially underprivileged children back to school. This was the very, very basic beginning. There was nothing complicated about it. And in a very few months, more people came on board. We started fundraising over social media, and 135 children were sent back to school in the school year 2010-2011. But what we realized afterwards, after actually dealing with the kids more, we started realizing that almost all of them were illiterate. None of them was even able to write his name. Their ages ranged from 6 years old all the way to 16, but it was the case with all of them. And we realized that the whole trick was, if you take private tutoring with the school teacher, then you get to pass the tests. If you don't take private tutoring, then you stay or you fail. It had absolutely nothing to do with learning, absolutely nothing to do with academic testing. And so back then we didn't have much of an alternative. We dreamt of, okay, we can become a school, we can start replacing the current system, but we didn't really have the resources. So what we did on the side was to start working on developing their character. So we did like a lot of other organizations. We established a character development program, started working with these kids after school on developing their character, developing certain character traits in them. And it seemed all good and fine. But again, after a few months, we started being very doubtful. And back then, we started asking ourselves, so how do we ever know that what we are providing to these kids is what they actually need? We have very different backgrounds. We grew in very different neighborhoods. We had very different experiences, very different education system. So how can we, sitting in the AC, in our offices, decide that this is what each and every child needs? And after trying so many things, trying to change the curriculum, change the tools, change the teaching methodologies, we were realizing that every session, a certain percentage of the kids was not actively engaged in the learning. And after trying things over and over, we were once having a corridor discussion, and I was talking to my co-founder, which is also my husband now, Muhammad, and I'm like, okay, so how do we ever know what they need? And he said, you know what, ask them. And this was brilliant. We actually sat there and we said, let's try something different. Let's try going to these kids and asking them, actually, what do you want to learn? And we did a brilliant 3-month experiment. Again, we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. We went to a group of 10 kids. Their average age was 9. We literally apologized to them. We said, we were very sorry. We've been always assuming that we know what you want to learn, but apparently we have absolutely no idea what you want. So here we are. We're asking you, what do you want to learn? And obviously, at the beginning, the kids thought we were kidding, so they said, okay, we want to learn Chinese. And we want to learn about dinosaurs and I don't know what, because they did not really take us seriously. How can an adult not know what's good for a child? But because they trusted us so much and because we were very genuine about the question, we kept asking it over and over. After a few sessions, the children came in and they said, you know what? We know what we want to learn. Some of us want to learn swimming, some of us want to learn karate, and some of us want to learn English. Now what? And so we said, okay, brilliant. These are the things you want to learn. Now tell us, what do you need in order to learn these things? So every child started thinking about the resources. The swimming kids started thinking about the coach, the swimming pool, the bathing suit, and so on and so forth. Same with karate, same with English. We said, okay, brilliant. Figure out the place. We don't know where to take you. We don't teach swimming. We have no idea. 2 days later, the kids call us up and they say, okay, you know what? We found a place. It's a youth club next to us. We want to go there. We want to speak to the coach. We took them there. They spoke to the coach. We stood again on the side. And then when they came back, we asked them, okay, so what did the coach say? They said, we need a certain amount of money for courses per month. We need a certain amount of money for a bathing suit. We need a certain amount of money for other gadgets, which was a total of almost $25 or $30 each. We said, okay, great. Figure out how you can get the money. We don't have these resources. We can't help you. Figure it out. And again, we had no idea what we were kind of getting into, but the whole assumption was, let's see what happens when the children actually decide for themselves, and let's see how far they can go when they have chosen the goal all by themselves. Again, 2 days later, one child calls me up. He's 12 years old. He says, Miss Yasmin, we had a meeting. We sat together somewhere at his father's house in the neighborhood, and we wrote down all the things we know how to do. We can do handicrafts, we can do origami, we can do jewelry. And what we want to do is that we want to do an exhibition, and we want to sell these products and get the profit from these products in order to finance our own learning. And I had no idea what to tell him. So I said, you know what, Ahmed, let's wait. Let's wait till Saturday, because that's when we meet, and let's talk about it. And I just had to run to my team and just figure out what we were going to tell them. And so what happened is that the kids came to us on Saturday with the products already made. They went all the way in their houses, took all the residual materials, sat with their mothers, asked them to teach them certain things, and they came in and they said, you know what, we're ready. We have the jewelry, we have the stands, we have everything. Yalla, we want to do the fundraiser. And these are actually the kids, in case you were wondering. And then what happened was the kids, over months, they decided that they don't want to hurt their brand by doing an exhibition when they were not entirely ready, because they did not have the best materials. So they said, you know, we want to borrow money from you, we want to buy better materials, we want to do this cycle over again, and then eventually we want to do a fundraiser. They did it once, they didn't like the products again, they did it a third time until they were totally satisfied. And in the process, we had absolutely no input. We were just sitting there, asking them questions. The kids were doing everything. And then after a few months, we did the fundraiser campaign. We only bought the place. We invited people. The kids did the products. They distributed the roles amongst them. They ran the show for 9 hours, welcoming the guests, taking them in, explaining to them everything. They decided to make it more of an experience, so they incorporated origami teaching inside the fundraiser. And after 9 hours of doing this event, the kids were able to raise double the amount of money they needed, which was 3,300 Egyptian pounds. So do the math and divide it by 7. That's the amount of dollars they got in 9 hours. And at the end, they were kind of able to do what they wanted to do for 2 entire months. After this experiment, the kids went home. They were very happy. They knew, okay, finally it's time for karate, finally it's time for swimming. But we, as people, we were very shocked. And because this experience actually challenged everything we've ever knew about education. And after that, we started asking ourselves, why did we never feel this way about school when we were kids? The kids were very proactive, they were doing everything, they were leading their entire learning, they were kind of fighting with us all the time. We want to start, yalla, let's do it, why are you guys so lazy? But we as students never felt this way about school. It was always the other way around. It was always someone trying to force us to do something and trying to convince us that when you do this, it's going to make your life better as an adult, which actually did not make much sense. And so after this experiment, we started dreaming and we started saying, what if school, instead of being the place where you go there as a child and someone tries to force you to do certain things and study certain things because of an external incentive that he has decided for you, what if school became the place that supplies you with the resources you need for you to go where you want to go, and not for you to go where some other person wants you to go? And I'll fast forward to where we are now. So after a lot of research, we realized that we're not the only people who've ever thought about that. It actually does exist. And there has been formalized institutions who do that. There were things called free schools, democratic schools. There were concepts called unschooling, which was basically about just not sending your kids to formalized schools. And our outcome or our vision for education was developing people who have the freedom and opportunity to aspire to their dreams. People who know what they want, they know what their strengths are, they know what their short-term goals are, what their long-term dreams are, and they know what are the resources around them. And these kids have the mindset that allows them to mobilize themselves and their resources towards what they want. And for us, the outcome of education, and the Educate Me graduate is one that looks kind of like that. So he has these skills, which is a combination of literacy skills, productivity skills, 21st century skills that have to do with creativity, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration, but also has a lot of principles and ethics within himself, and has a lot of behaviors that help him actually keep going on. In order to implement this curriculum, we've established a community development center in the impoverished neighborhood where we serve. It's called Kunayesa in Giza. We have served almost 200 children and parents through this community center. The center has been rented for the past 2 years, but at this very specific moment, we're fundraising in order to buy it because we want to stay in this neighborhood forever. And like a lot of you were saying before, we're suffering from the problem of getting foreign donations inside the country because of the ecosystem, but we're now at 20% of the fundraising, having started 10 days ago. And the total amount is $55,000 in case you're curious. Our programs, we have 3 core programs. They work with children age 4 to 15 and also with their parents. The first program is Early Childhood Education Program, targeting children from 4 to 8. Most of these children also go to school, and the program really focuses on the very basic pre-reading, pre-writing skills, social emotional development, sensory motor skills. So it's kind of preparing them for at the very basic stage. And then they move to another program that's very much inspired by the experiment I just told you. And in this program, the kids come to us and we deal with them as if they're in college. So they come to us every semester. They get introduced to all the learning choices or all the learning opportunities or the learning options that we have. So they get to see that we have Arabic, English, maths, we have programming, robotics, judo, basketball, different kinds of handicrafts, music, and also the opportunity for them to come up with their own project that they then plan and finance and all that. So the kids get introduced to these things, and every month they're required to choose what they want to learn. So if a kid wants to come to Educate Me and just spend his entire time playing, that's totally fine by us. If kids want to learn 1 thing, 2 things, 3 things, again, it's totally fine. And the whole point is that every person has a choice, and every choice has a consequence. And as a person who has a choice, you also have a responsibility towards your choice. So at this very small age, at the age of 9, they get to practice the habit of choice every month. So they get to choose what they want to learn, and then they're held responsible for their learning. They need to abide by certain things, they need to have certain attendance, they need to have certain participation. And again, if they do this, there are consequences. If they do not do this, there are consequences. So for us, learning is not about our judgment of what they need to learn or what they have to learn. It's more about, it's your responsibility, it's your learning. We cannot really force you to learn anything. If this is what you want to do, then do it, because we cannot convince you otherwise. So the kids start really thinking about what they want. And a lot of people would guess that if a child is just left to his own devices, he's going to keep playing PlayStation all the time. But this actually does not happen. So our highest enrollment is in Arabic, in English, in maths. But the kids actually do this actively and out of their own will because they think these things are benefit for them both on the short term and the long term. To give you an example, I was having a conversation with an 11-year-old called Yusuf, and I was asking him what he wanted to do in the future. And he said, I want to have a stable and I want to trade horses. And I asked him, do you think that what you're learning in Educate Me now is going to help you then? And he said, yes. He said, if I learn maths, then I'm going to be able to count money and no one is going to be able to trick me. If I can read, then I can read contracts and then no one can trick me into doing something I don't want to do because I can't read. So he literally really understands how what he's doing now is serving him in the future. And this is exactly what we think learning is about. And this is exactly how we would have wanted to learn as kids. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, we have a relatively big team. Our paid staff are 11 full and part-timers. We have 50 volunteers. But when it comes to volunteering with us, volunteering also is very different. So there's a very long process that people have to go through to make sure that they have the passion and they have the commitment. They are put on probation, they go through an interview, they go through a selection, they get a lot of trainings, but eventually we get a lot out of them, even if they're not paid, just because they believe so much in the concept and just because they're very consistent. So we have people who have been consistently working with us for 3 years, next to their corporate jobs, next to their full-time studies. And again, the whole idea is built around the internal motivation, the internal incentive to be part of this whole organization. Finally, I want to comment on my own experience with RISE. I was one of the 3 winners of NIGMA in March last year and attended the accelerator in November. And honestly, I had absolutely no expectations because there are all those fancy entrepreneurship programs and mentorship opportunities where you go and people keep telling you, this is how you do a business plan, and this is how you do a pitch, and this is how you do this. And I'm not very interested in that. But the program with RISE was very interesting because we were the ones who identified exactly what we wanted. We identified our own learning needs. We identified the organizations we would like to go, where we would like to visit, or key people we would like to talk to. And the experience was very, very highly tailored. We spent almost 2 weeks in Boston, DC, and Dover. And I had another team member with me, and when we came back, one of the decisions actually she took that Mona doesn't know is to quit her corporate job and join Educate Me as a full-timer, and she's starting with us next week. And also we came back with so much information, so much inspiration that has been really driving us up till today. One of them had to do with impact evaluation, had to do with how to build our logic model, how to be able to assess our impact and the different levels of impact, which is something I've personally never been exposed to in any other mentorship/fellowship program. And I would like to take this opportunity to actually thank Mona in person and RISE Egypt at large, but Mona is a very, very genuine person. I'm sure that most of you are here today because of her. As a person as well, and because of the very personal bonds she built. And she has actually built, and she has actually built this RISE with also the same concept. So she has those very personal bonds with us as people. She doesn't deal with us as beneficiaries who are on the other side. We have very open communication all the time. We can always bounce ideas off each other. And I'm sure that also a lot of us are here today because we really respect you so much. We're very much grateful to you because you really care so much about this program and you care so much about Egypt. So thank you.